my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. Today, we are talking about Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 4, Eldest. Joining me is Justin, but you might better know him as FreddiesRoommate on TikTok. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, I can't believe Legal let me come back. Like, this is crazy.
This is a different podcast. It's a different podcast, so you can come on. Yeah.
Legally, I can come back to this podcast. I was really worried for a second, but I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm happy you're here. I'm happy to talk about something that I might know more than you do this time around.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
And you know what? I probably also have those questions too. So, but I am at least a little more knowledgeable in this realm than I have been with Star Wars. So that's a nice dynamic shift now for I hold the power. I have the high ground, Anakin.
Oh my gosh, here we go. I mean, yeah, I feel like we're watching Anakin and Padme play out in real time, but that's a whole nother pod, you know? On this show.
What?
Okay.
Right. Who's Anakin and who's Padme?
We'll get there when we get there.
What? Okay. All right. That's scary. Question though for you. How are you feeling about Rings of Power Season 2 so far? What are your general thoughts? Because we are now halfway through the season with episode 4, which is crazy because it just premiered, like the show just premiered like last week, you know?
I have to separate my mind into two things, right? One, the math of it in that, Hi, Freddie. I'm sorry. He's just walking around. The math of it is that I don't think season 2 is generating as much buzz or cultural relevance as the first season. And that's okay. It's not a merit on how good it is, but there's just something that is not catching the way the first season did, you know? And I guess that's just like, maybe it was pinning House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, airing them in the same week. Maybe that fueled a lot of like discussion, but like I'm more so outside of the Tolkien bubble than you are. You know what I mean? And it just seems like it's just not hitting, you know? How I feel about the show specifically, like how I feel like week to week, you know what I mean? I am very curious at how they're gonna square this circle.
Right.
Because right now it feels as though they're relying on my knowledge of the source material to conjure that investment in these plot lines. But they seem to be changing a lot of the source material, and that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? I am not a Tolkien expert by far, so I'm the person that cares the least. But what I have seen are the films. And I know the showrunners are like, we're not going to pretend that you guys haven't seen the films. And like,
we've all seen them.
Yes, exactly. And so I am basically probably the most layman, normie person going into this.
And I think that's why it's most important to talk to people like you, who you are just a very average Tolkien fantasy fan. And you are, you know, you've seen the movies, you like them a lot. You're invested in, you know, following up on this world in this new era and this new show that they're doing. And so that's why I know we were joking that I brought you on at the last minute because of some scheduling conflicts, but I genuinely really value your opinion and your perspective because you don't have as much of that like background lore stuff. And that's who I think they need to be making the show for, rather than the people, the Don Marshalls of the world who have all of the knowledge, you know, because I think that's a very weak show is when you're depending on people having that prior knowledge. And so that's what I'm curious to hear in our conversation. If you feel like that's a failing of the show or if you feel like they're doing a good job of filling in the gaps for you.
I'm hesitating to call it a failing because I like what I'm seeing. I'm just a little confused.
Yeah.
I'm confused about where they want me, where the ball is. You know, if it's like,
and you know what? I am too, you know? Kind of. There's a lot of things that we're investing time in, and I'm not sure why, and why we're not investing time in other areas, or why we even why do we even have this ball to begin with?
Right. So I'm having a good time. I'm just wondering, like I felt the same way when what was that show? The Acolyte came along, you know what I mean? And Star Wars is like, yeah, I'm into this. Like, but it's relied so much on a reveal happening that we all kind of figured out 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so when it happened, it's supposed to be like dun dun dun. And you're like,
Gotcha. Yeah. I totally
okay,
see
you know
that.
what I mean?
So
And
what
the
you're saying
Acolyte,
is the
yeah.
Acolyte deserved to get canceled. Wow.
No, I don't
That's
think
really
the
harsh,
Acolyte deserved to
Justin.
get hit. No, but I do think, well, this is not a podcast about the Acolyte at all. So let's just talk about Lord of the Rings. What did you think of the episode, Mary Clay?
Um, I still this has been my number one criticism since episode 1, season 1, and it still holds true for this episode as well, that they're doing too much. They be doing too much. They usually a episode of a show will have an ABC plot. If it's a longer like an hour long, there might be some, minor DE plot lines, but this show, so in this episode, our A plot is, let's say, Galadriel and Elrond on this journey to go to Eregion.
Mm-hmm.
Our B plot is the Stranger and the Harfoots and Rune, and our C plot is Isildur and Arondir trying to find Theo. But within each of those plot lines, there are additional subplots. So there's this subplot of Elrond not trusting Galadriel because of this ring and not trusting this power. The subplot of the orcs and Adar moving in the background. In Rune, that's where I think they're just doing too much. There's the Stranger and Tom Bombadil. The Harfoots meet the Stores, and then the Stores tell this legend of the Harfoot of how they went out in search of the Shire essentially long ago, and then the Dark Wizard and the Galdrim, who are the people looking for them. That's like 4 plot lines in itself. And then Isildur and Estrid's backstory, they have a little romance going potentially. Arondir and the Ents, and then Theo is leading to some new destiny or something by the end. So there's just so much going on, and I feel like it doesn't give us time to invest in anything in a worthwhile way.
And we still, this episode is removed from what I'm assuming, as a normie Tolkien fan, is the main engine of the show, which is the Rings of Power.
Right. Yeah. We haven't even. So my complaint from the end of the previous episode was that I'm not getting the nuance of the Numenor plotline that I want to be getting. And I feel like we finally got some momentum going. Now let's keep it going. I would really love to see Numenor in the next episode, and then we don't see them here. So all of the momentum that we gained from the Numenor plotline in the previous episode is completely lost, because now it's another week that we're not going to see that. We don't see the dwarves and their rings. We don't see Anatar and Celebrimbor in this episode. Yeah, there's so much going on, and I think the writers were optimistic in what they could portray and what they believe fans wanted to see, but I'm not sure they had enough space for it all.
If you could cut one plot line from the show, what would it be?
The Stranger.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's not what I would cut at all.
I would cut the Stranger and the Harfoots, and I would just move them to like maybe season 3 or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Because they're totally separate from everything else. At least Numenor was somewhat intertwined with everything.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What would you cut?
I would have cut Numenor.
Yeah. That's the other one that's weaker to me.
And not because it's weaker, it's because like I wish we could have felt that absence in the story when Isildur is cut off from Numenor. I think I would have felt better about it if like, we don't know what's going on over there, and then come back episodes
and then maybe
later.
like in even like in episode 7 or 8 of this season, we come back at the very end of the season and and it's like a big time jump, and we see they've really kind of like divided into these two like political factions.
Exactly. But like as now, when we check into Numenor, it feels like we're spinning the wheels of the show, you know? It's like, all
Yeah.
right, well, like, and I like what I'm seeing. That's the problem, though. I like the Queen. I like Isildur's dead. I like
Right. Yeah.
Pharazôn. I think he's a very interesting character. He's just all the
Over
way
there.
over there.
Yeah, literally and figuratively, for
Right.
sure.
You know,
Totally
I
agree that like when I'm in these moments, when I'm actively watching every scene, I'm invested and I'm involved and I care about what the characters are doing. I think the acting is great. I think the writing is much better this season. The music is always beautiful and amazing. But yeah, overall, overarchingly, I'm not sure. And I think these last four episodes, I think really need to kind of push things forward. And I hope we see that. Did you have anything else?
no, let's dive into the
Okay. Yeah,
episode.
yeah, let's get into it. So, Elrond leads a group of elves, including Galadriel, to Eregion, since they have yet to hear from Celebrimbor. Along the way, they are forced to take a different route that Galadriel warns against, using foresight from the ring. Still distrustful of her with the ring, Elrond leads the group into a forest where they encounter the Barrow Downs and must fight against the Barrow-wights. Galadriel promises that the ring is only guiding her to protect them and Middle-earth, although Elrond is still hesitant to believe her. They eventually cross paths with Adar and a group of orcs, and Galadriel uses the power from the ring to heal one of their injured elves and then gives it to Elrond. They are able to get away as she causes a diversion with the orcs, but is captured by Adar. I love the dynamic that we get between Elrond and Galadriel, this like interpersonal conflict that we're seeing play out where in the opening scene, they're planning this trip and he's like, we need a swordsman and an archer. And she's like, oh, so you trust me now to make this decision? And he's like, well, I mean, if you think this position is too low for you, we can reassign it to someone else. And I love seeing this like kind of cold, distrustful dynamic between them play out where this is a different season of their friendship than they've been at before.
Because I was, as a normie, I was like, oh, they're best friends. Oh, and they don't see each other for the entire season. Okay, all right. You know what I mean? Like in last season. So
Right.
I love seeing the interdynamics of like Elrond's now in charge. He doesn't trust the rings, but Galadriel is mathematically right on what to do and where to go. But do you trust the rings? Like that is fascinating to me. But I would like to take this moment and say, get on my high horse and say, this show would not exist without Star Wars because there were so many Star Wars moments in this episode. Let me count the ways. Number one, right? Healing the same way. Galadriel heals that elf guy the same way Rey heals Kylo.
Yeah.
Come on. Like that was straight from Star Wars, and that's a good thing. That's fine. Obviously, the Kylo Ren and Rey, that was ripped straight from, or like that is heavily.
Who do you think who is Rey and who is Kylo Ren in this show?
Sauron is Kylo Ren. Come on. Think about it. Don't you dare. Sauron is Kylo Ren. Galadriel is Rey. They're communicating through magic, like come on, just like the Force visions that were in The Last Jedi, right? Don't you look at me like that. You know I'm right. You know I'm
No,
right.
you are so wrong.
I'm right. You're gonna look at me and tell me I'm wrong?
Yeah, I'm looking straight at you and I'm telling you you're wrong.
No. Okay. Rings of Power is heavily influenced by Star Wars, and Star Wars is heavily influenced by fantasy. So it all leads back to Tolkien-esque properties. It's all full circle. But I'm saying this interpretation of this relationship, especially this Galadriel and Sauron, is heavily influenced by the sequel trilogy. You're going to look at me and tell me I'm wrong? Come on. You know I'm right. This would not exist in this way without the sequel trilogy.
I think it's
I'm right.
beautiful that you are able to make these comparisons to further draw meaning from this viewing for your own perspective. I think that's
Chat,
great.
back me up. The comments back me up. Tweet at Mary Clay that she's wrong. Anyway.
I will. All right, I'll give you this, Justin. I'll post on Threads and ask, do we see a Kylo Ren-Rey dynamic reflected in Galadriel Sauron? And we'll see what the people think. I think the people are going to be on my side.
How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet?
I don't know.
$20. $20. That's like a lunch. Yeah, $20. Shake on it.
All right, we're shaking on it.
Virtual shake.
Virtual shake. Anyway. Here, let's choose a charity. How about? And we'll donate.
Oh, that's actually nice.
Let's make it an actual bet, and we'll donate some money to a charity that, I don't know, we'll figure out at another time.
Deal.
Let's do it.
Deal. Okay. Anyway, what did you think of this whole shindig, Mary Clay?
I think so. This like the elf plotline for this episode is largely, we need to convince Elrond that the rings of power that the elves had are not necessarily bad, and that's kind of like the ultimate goal that we get to here. It unfortunately costs them the life of that one elf from the Barrow Downs, ripped to a real one. Hey, this might be a racially charged question, but how do you feel about the fact that they killed off the only black elf in their group?
Okay. Let's get for listeners, I am black if you didn't know, but I was prepared to answer this question because number one, I have known on TikTok we're talking about black hairstyles in media, right? And you can always tell when a white person is in charge of a black hairstyle. You can always tell, right? But if we look at my main man's, he has a lineup. He does. He looks good. He looks crispy.
Daymore,
the black elf. I was like, okay, he looks crispy. Okay. What's his name? Like, okay, Patrick, I see you. You made sure his lineup was crispy, but gigantic asterisk though. I do think that it takes me out of the immersion of the show that these black men have very crispy modern hairstyles, which I love. Don't come at me in the comments.
Right.
But I do think it stands in stark contrast to the other elves in the scenes that we see. You know what I mean? They get to be long and flowing and like almost like ethereal. That can happen with black hairstyles. Just look at Disa with her hair down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It can happen. I'm just wondering, every black elf we've seen is like
which so far it's kind of only 2.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's fine. We're going to get more. I'm hoping we get more. I'm just saying, like, let's open up the creativity. Let's look at some couple of black hairstyles. Maybe this black elf could have had a longer haircut. You know what I mean? Give him a little bit of a fro. You know what I mean? Get one of those like fro brushes, you know, make sure it's nice and curly. He'd fit in just fine. I'm telling you, it's okay. This is a good first step though. So I'm not angry, but it's a B. I'll give it a B+, you know? Like you saw my videos, you corrected, but we can go further, you know?
Yeah. So in other words, you don't really care that he died.
I care that he died, but I thought
it was for sure one of those things that you're kind of, he's, you know, for the purposes of the story, he's inconsequential elf number 4 in this group, right?
Yes.
But it's kind of, so it's kind of like, whatever, give or take one of the elves. But then it's when you're like, oh man.
But what's weird about that specific elf, or just the elf plotline in general, is that I don't know if we talked about how one actress left the show to pursue activism on this entire show.
Yes,
Arondir's love interest, right?
Yeah. Bronwyn.
And
ripped to a homie. Oh, she's not in, you know, in this one. We had a conversation in The Last Jedi about the ethics of recasting and like when it makes sense to do it. Do you think they should have recast her role for this show?
Yes.
Or this season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like she hasn't passed away. She just quit her job. It's fine.
Yeah.
But what happens is when she dies off screen, everything that I cared about Arondir disappears.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he is in limbo hanging out
Because
with a
yeah, he and
Sildor.
Bronwyn, they were kind of like the heart of the
Yes.
story,
And
and
they were a great contrast between Sauron and Galadriel, a human and elf. Well, he was like Halbarad and Galadriel. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
the contrast, you know? And so now that he's gone, when Galadriel's like, oh, I'll give a group of elves. If she can't be in the show anymore and you don't want to recast her, that's fine. But why can't one of these elves be a Rondir? You know what I'm saying?
Because
Like,
he's way over geographically somewhere else.
yeah, I know. But
I think
like, come
that's
on.
why. And I think he feels this. We can get into it when we get to that plot line, to that
Mhm.
story. But I think he feels, a responsibility over Theo. He's a single father now.
Oh my gosh.
He's
It's
like,
just
dang,
like,
I
why
adopted
can't
this
we
child suddenly.
do you think they should have recast her?
Yeah, I do.
Because now he's just in limbo.
Let's put this on pause. We'll circle back to it. We'll circle back to it. But yeah. So along their trip, by the way, we get some classic Lord of the Rings sweeping landscape traveling shots, as the elves are like on mountains, and I think it's not Tolkien unless you do that, right? Unless it's like, oh, we're traveling across the beautiful scenery of New Zealand. Actually, I don't know if they filmed this in New Zealand like they did the
Good
movies,
question.
but
There's a lot of forests. I don't know what's in New Zealand, so I don't know.
a lot of really beautiful stuff. Yeah. Anyway, and they have to go on a new path because this bridge has been totally destroyed. Galadriel's like, this is not the work of. They're like, oh, a lightning strike, and she's like, this was Sauron, and I'm like, but was it though? Because Sauron is, yeah, he maybe he could be preoccupied with a lot of things, and he probably is, but like. He's with Celebrimbor doing his thing with the rings. Did he really orchestrate this? Or was this Adar somehow? I don't think Adar has that power, but anyway, when they're like, okay, yeah, let's go here. And she has that like foresight of what's going to happen and says, no, we can't go this way. I think that here's the thing. Even if I did not trust Galadriel at that point, if she is saying that way is filled with evil and malice, nope. We're not going that way then, Like if she said, oh yeah, like let's go this way. I think this will be great. Then I'm like, okay, you're obviously leading me down a path that you want us to go down intentionally for one way or another. But like, maybe let's listen to her. And then Elrond going, your opinion has been heard. So cold.
Very much a like a per my last email kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, dang, okay. I understand Elrond. I get where he's coming from.
I
And
know.
ultimately, I think he is kind of right. He is kind of right. This is where like normie
He
knowledge. Oh,
ultimately is like when you get to the point that we are in Fellowship of the Ring, and then like these hobbits show up with this evil ring, and he's like, oh my God, I tried to stop this train
mhm,
thousands of years ago and no one listened to me. You get it. You get it where he's coming from.
mhm. I do have a question. I have a
Mm-hmm.
question. So, as what I'm told, is normie knowledge says Sauron never helped build the rings,
Mm-hmm.
or he never touched them. So those rings are good to go,
Yes.
right? They're not evil. But in the show, Sauron, I guess he gave him the schematics. Celebrimbor, like he taught him how to make them, or
Right.
he gave him the ideas. Is it a physical touch, or is it
I
like,
think it's a physical
well,
touch, and I think it's also a knowledge thing because what he and Celebrimbor discuss initially are two rings, like
mm,
1 to 2 rings. And they even talk about doing like a crown at some point. But when
mm,
he leaves and Galadriel says, let's make 3, that's when they're officially doing something that is out of his knowledge. Sauron
got
at this
you.
point does not know that 3 elven rings of power were made. And then I don't know if you, in the previous episode, when they're forging the dwarven rings, Sauron like asks for that piece of mithril and he like personally holds it in his hand and he has like a personal investment in making those rings. So I think
Right.
that's where that differentiation comes into play.
Interesting. Okay. See, I
But
learned
but
something new
but
today.
Elrond at this point, the elves, they don't know all that. They don't know what is going to come, and they don't know that. oh, it's so important that these rings were made without the knowledge or without Sauron being involved. They don't, they don't know any of that. And so Elrond is, I think, right to be very cautious of it.
I wonder if there's going to be a moment where someone's going to be like, yeah, those 2 rings. And then Celebrimbor was like, 2 rings?
We made 3.
Dun, dun, dun. I think that's going to be the reveal. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. But continue.
I don't think there's going to... Actually, I'll put a pause on that until we come to another part of the story. Anyway, when they get to the Barrow Downs, they're immediately like, this place ain't right. And I'm like, then keep walking. Why do they stop and linger and investigate and poke around? You're not Scooby-Doo. Don't Scooby-Doo this nonsense. Get out of there and don't just leave. And that's when we have to sacrifice one of the elves in order to understand like the weight of what this place is. Do you feel like they did a good job of explaining what this place is and what the Barrow-wights are for you as a normie?
Because they didn't. Well, I'm a normie, and so the only book that I've read in total is The Hobbit. That's the only one that I legit read. Like,
and you know what? I think that's the only one that people in general need to read.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think anyone has to read The Lord of the Rings unless you are a huge fantasy nerd. But The Hobbit is like an enjoyable romp, you know?
Yeah, I liked when I read it. I read it for class too, and it was like a very good time. But as far as like these ghostly people, I was like, is that the Witch King? Is that the whatchamacallits? Like the Nazgul? I was like, I guess not. So these ghosts just kind of came out of nowhere for me. I was like, okay, all right. They're not gonna die. They'll be all right, you know? So I was unfazed.
Okay. So, and that's kind of like unfortunate because I think the Barrow Downs and the Barrow-wights are a really cool part of the lore that isn't in PJ's movies. So it's kind of a bummer that they didn't really set it up well in the show. So the Barrow Downs were a part of this land that the people who came over from Numenor after things happen with Numenor that I won't get into because I don't remember how much you know or don't know.
I know that it's Atlantis, and Atlantis fell, I'm assuming.
Yes. Okay, great. So the people come back over to this land and they start establishing life, and then wars happen, various battles happen, a plague happens, and the people in this area of the land die. And then the Witch King comes out over here and kind of like does some like dark magic, like sprinkles some dark magic that like this place will always be like haunted, essentially, that like no one will ever find rest here. And so that's why it looks so creepy that like no one ever was able to resettle on this land because of the people that died there and were buried there. And then the Witch King kind of like like I said, did some dark magic sprinkles. And these weapons that they pull out that Elrond, once again, it takes one of the elves dying for Elrond to be like, wait a minute, I remember the lore that these blades are the only ones that can kill them. So the blades that he pulls out have this special kind of elven magic that's specifically designed for fighting darkness of this sort. And in the book, the hobbits actually encounter the Barrow-wights, and Tom Bombadil saves them from them. And Tom Bombadil gives the hobbits these swords. And that is why when Merry stabs the Witch King in the leg, it makes such a difference because the sword has this level of magic involved that it's able to kind of like penetrate that darkness, that it's not just like a mortal blade, you know?
Okay. All right. How fun. That's fun. These look a little big for hobbits, but that's a whole nother show, you know?
And I think there's that shot where it's the Avengers shot, where they all line up, they circle around and they pull out their swords and arrows and whatever.
See, that's the thing. Like, I know that came from Avengers or was inspired by Avengers, except I only know 2 of these people. I'm only invested in 2
of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, what if? I hate this is not criticism because rewriting the show is not good criticism. I've said it before. But what if just those two, like Arondir and Isildur, were just in that group, and then the Avengers shot happened? I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yes, okay. How are they gonna get out of this?
Yeah, like let's combine some of these plot lines a little more.
That would be a great way to consolidate these plot lines. Like Isildur gets to hang out with what's his name? Oh my gosh.
Galadriel, Elrond?
Robert Ormeo, what's his name? Yeah,
That's Elrond,
right? Yes. So that
you knew the
relationship,
actor's name but couldn't remember the character.
that's because I met him, but that's a whole
You
other
met
thing.
him?
Yeah, I met him when the season 1 premiere happened.
Oh
remember?
my God.
But those two can build the relationship, so it matters when he's about to throw the ring into the volcano, right? You know what I mean? Maybe Galadriel and Arondir can like relate on falling in love with humans who are not human anymore. You know what I mean? Like consolidate those plot lines, make them love each other, mix them. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's valid. That's valid. And I think any other show would do that, but because there's like this geographical presence of the show that like there's an established map of like, okay, this group is kind of over near where Mordor is, and this group is way on the other side, and they're struggling to get to this other location. So how is Isildur and Arondir going to get there without also running into their own Barrow Wights? But I think any other show would do that. Yeah. So the next morning, Galadriel is like kind of like, I told you so. I mean, she doesn't say that, but it's kind of it's kind of like, Elrond, why did we have to have people die for you to understand? Maybe you could have listened to Galadriel when she was trying to help you out. And she's explaining this ring is only trying to protect us all, and it's only trying to help me serve this larger mission of keeping the darkness at bay and protecting the rest of Middle Earth from it. And Elrond is kind of like, I still don't buy into this, but if it comes, like when it comes down to it, I will absolutely fight Sauron. And if you're in the way, I understand, which is what she asks him. She's like, if it comes between me and Sauron, then you need to forget about me and fight Sauron. And we at least have this, if they're differing of their opinions about the rings, they still are at least united in this overall mission to take down Sauron.
I get it. But is it okay to be thirsty on this podcast?
Did you say that because I just took a drink of water?
No. Well, good timing, listener. She was drinking water, but
are you gonna talk about how hot Elrond's hair is? Because it is.
No. What? No.
I think it's the most beautiful hair, specifically this season. It's so beautiful. I just want to run my hands through it.
Oh my gosh, Mary Clay. You know what? Okay,
who are you thirsting for?
Okay, it was just the way Galadriel just rolls her R's. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Okay, dialect coach.
Morphin Clark is very good at speaking like the Elvish language.
Yeah, I was like, damn, okay. I see you. But that's all. And then she has like a very cool like backflip scene. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
all right,
she can get it. She can get it.
Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, but that scene then leads into the distraction scene, which I also have questions for, but that
was the kind of thing that okay. So,
I have questions.
Yeah.
How are elves? I want to know how superhuman the elves are, right? Because part of me is like, they saw that like that cavern, the bridge was. I was like, I feel like I've seen an elf jump that. I've seen an elf like jump that distance, but all right.
Nah, not that far.
Not that far. It's too far. Okay. But also, Galadriel's taking on all of these like orcs. And I'm like, okay, why can't they help her? You know,
because they're trying to get away. She knows that they can't take them all, but she's like, I can hold off them for a while, and she's like, it's just me, ha ha ha.
I don't know, for what we see in the show, I feel like 3 or 4 elves could take on that group of orcs. You know what I mean? I was just a little confused about what their strengths are. You know what I'm saying?
I think that was a strategic choice for them in that moment. Okay. She knew that if she fought them and distracted them and gave them gave the others a chance to get away, that had a higher chance of success than all of them fighting the orcs. Like, it's much riskier for all of them to fight the orcs than for her to put herself in this situation where she knows she's going to get captured or die or, whatever. But know that the ring has made it with Elrond to Celebrimbor into Eregion.
Gotcha.
Where Elrond believes like it's needed most, because he's in season 1, Celebrimbor says that Elrond's father, which is a whole other thing, told him that one day Celebrimbor's life would be in the hands of Elrond. And Elrond believes that time has come now. And that's why he is so insistent that they get there as fast as possible. Where he's like, I don't care that even though this bridge is destroyed and you're saying this is the bad way to go, this is also the fastest way. We have to do this. And his life is in my hands and I still don't trust these rings. So I don't want to use them if his life could potentially be on the line. And seeing that, I think the whole episode, I think for Elrond was trusting in Galadriel and trusting in the ring that she has. And I think that final straw is, no, actually, I wouldn't even say that. So she heals that one elf who gets shot and they're all kind of like, what? That was crazy. And then I think the final, like, okay, you're not in it for the power that this ring gives you, is when she takes it off and gives it to him and says, take it and leave and run, that she's like, and sacrifices herself. And he's like, okay, I finally see, maybe we can use this. Maybe we can harness this power for good.
Mm-hmm. I respect it. So like, I think this is proof for me as a viewer, as a normie viewer. I'm like, oh, okay. So these rings are definitely not evil because you can take them off willy-nilly. It's fine.
Yeah. A couple moments to call out when Galadriel says, these are elven lands, go back to the shadow. That was giving me mad like Arwen in Fellowship of the Ring when she's saving Frodo and she like yells at the ring wraiths like, if you want him, come and claim him, or whatever. Smooth, and then she like sends the wave over them. And then when Adar comes out and is like, oh, look what we found here, he says, a star shines upon the hour of our meeting. This is what Frodo in the book says. As Frodo and the other hobbits are leaving the Shire, they run into a group of elves, actually, that are on their way to the Grey Havens, I believe. And Frodo knows some Elvish, and he says, a star shines upon the hour of our meeting to this group of elves. And then they like spend a night like chatting and hanging out and chilling together before they like embark on this journey. And it's small moments like this where I'm like, this feels very Tolkienian. The writers are doing their research. They're showing their work. And I appreciate it,
but that doesn't mean anything to me. It's like, oh, okay, nice. Anyways,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I'm invested in the character that I'm seeing on screen more. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't make any sense.
Gotcha. I totally like understand hearing stuff like that and being like, oh, yeah, I guess that adds like an extra level of, oh, that was cool. That was a nice detail. Good fun fact.
Like, it's like how I feel about other shows. It's like, oh, like, you ever hear the term glup shido in Star Wars? Where it's like, hey,
Justin, I was going to say it's how I feel about Star Wars. Anytime you have told me some long backstory fact about like this moment or whatever, it's how I felt. To be like, oh, offensive. Okay.
You don't mean that.
Great. That's cool.
That's just stab me in the heart. Why don't you? Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess we didn't really, we just said that Galadriel was really badass in this fight. It's the kind of thing where like physics don't really apply, but you know what? If Legolas can shield surf down a flight of stairs and shoot at a bunch of orcs, then anyone can do anything else, So I'm willing to let all of the parkour moments kind of slide and be like, you know what, this is just like a fun, nice, like badass moment.
Do you think she partially did it to see Sauron?
No.
See if he's there. Really? Okay.
I think she knows that Sauron is doing something else. Because that's what she says to Gil-galad when they're like, oh yeah, let's go attack Mordor, let's get Sauron. She's like, I think he's off doing something else. I think he has bigger stakes in the game, and he, you know, is off conquering the rest of, he wants to conquer the rest of Middle Earth. He will be out trying to do that elsewhere.
What is the likelihood? Or what would you say? 50-50, above 50%, or actually 60-40, above 60% or below 40%. The chances that we see Galadriel smooch Sauron this season. We just see a smooch happen.
I don't know. I think it's a below 60%.
Interesting.
Below,
okay.
I'll say below 40% even.
Right.
But that's tricky because there was some interview where someone asked Morfydd Clark what a good surprise or like a moment that she was looking forward to or that fans could look forward to. And she said a kiss. And then she kind of stopped and she was wondering what else she could say. And then she just kind of trails off and the interviewer is like, can't say anything more. And she's like, I think that's it. A kiss. I think I think that's going to be a kiss between her and her hubby, Celeborn, who she believes in the show, in the universe of the show, is dead. But I think he's going to turn up. I think he's going to be some surprise appearance towards the end of the season.
Do you think so? We haven't seen him yet?
No. Okay. She thinks that she mentions in season 1 at some point that he was lost in a battle or a war or something. Mm-hmm. And she hasn't seen him since. I doubt that the show would make such a huge divergence from the hard facts of Lord of the Rings to just kill off her hubby, because they go on to have their child later. This is where it gets iffy because Elrond and Galadriel in this show look the same age and they're friends. Galadriel's child becomes Elrond's wife.
Oh.
So, and then Galadriel, and then they have Arwen. So Galadriel is Arwen's grandmother.
Okay. Interesting.
But anyway, I don't know because, and also when she's talking to Elrond about the ring, kind of before they get into the last part of the episode, she says, I see there will be great sacrifices. And we see Eregion being ransacked and destroyed. And I think we see a little flash of Halbrand. So I don't know. I think she is going to have to confront him again at some point, but I don't know if that will be a romantic confrontation.
All right, we'll see. We'll have to see.
I know. All right, moving on now to the part of the story that I said maybe we could cut and put on a different part of the season, but that's okay. But that's okay because this is also a delightful part of the show that brings to life a dream of mine since I had read chapter 4 of Fellowship of the Ring many, many years ago. The stranger searches for the Harfoots after being separated and stumbles across a lone stranger named Tom Bombadil. After rescuing him from a tree, that is such a funny sentence, the stranger learns that Tom has a deep understanding of an ancient magic and had previously helped the Dark Wizard. Tom believes it is the stranger's mission to confront the Dark Wizard and Sauron and prevent them from joining forces. Meanwhile, Nori and Poppy stumble upon a community of halflings called Stores. While they initially distrust the Harfoots, their leader tells them how a Store left long ago in search of lush lands to call a new home. However, it seems they never found it and instead continued to wander, eventually becoming the group of Harfoots. They are interrupted by the Galdrim, who continue their search for Nori and Poppy, but are protected and hidden by the Stores. So in this episode, we get the iconic enigma known as Tom Bombadil. And for a normie like you, this is probably so meaningless.
Here's the thing. I've been in this space long enough to know that this is supposed to be important. He's huge. Like the fact that they cut him from the original films is the biggest like mistake they ever did. The Tom Bombadil. I'm like, okay, he Santa Claus. All right, okay. I think I at first I thought he was. Oh wait, is he Gandalf? Is he a wizard? You know, he's like, I'm the eldest, and I was like, oh, that's Tom Bombadil. Okay, I know that he's like one of the old like eldritch beings of I don't know. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I just know Tom Bombadil as the meme. They shouldn't have cut him. That's all I know. And so he was talking to this imaginary wife lady, and I was like, okay, I know he's not evil, but what is he doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is going on? What's the point? Is he supposed to push him in the right direction? He's not a wizard, so I don't know.
Justin, all these questions and thoughts you are having are Tom Bombadil. That is just the experience of Tom Bombadil.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. He seems nice. I mean,
right?
is he like, I don't know. It's almost as this like the question that I kept having watching Lord of the Rings. Why don't they help? Why don't they do anything? Where are those people? You know, the fact that he was like, nope, it can't be me. But also Gandalf, who's totally not Gandalf, legally distinct Gandalf, you need to go take out evil and beat Sauron, just so you know. Like, oh, okay. All right. Is that in line with what the original Tom Bombadil, you know, is that like, is he gonna be like, oh, by the way, you need to go destroy evil, but why can't you do it, Tom Bombadil?
He says, I'm a wanderer, not a warrior.
Okay, Yoda. You know what?
That's what I wrote down. I said, this is very Yoda of him, that he's kind of like living in seclusion, living his own life. He previously trained the other Istar, who became the Dark Wizard once he was able to tap into those powers. But he is like, my hands are off of this matter because I'm not the one to deal with this. This is not my destiny. This is not my fate to deal with that. That's someone else's. Largely, I think they did. The huge issue that a lot of people had with Tom Bombadil is that he completely derails the plot of Fellowship of the Ring. That they're on their, like, you're reading this book and like 75 pages in, good God, they're finally on their way on this journey. Like, the plot is starting. Great. And then it kind of screeches to a halt again because they have this encounter. A lot of what is portrayed in this episode is actually taken from the book. The hobbits are eaten by a tree, much like the stranger is in this episode. And I also think it's very funny that like the stranger goes to break a branch off of like a live tree, and then the tree's like, hey, watch it. No, I'm alive here. Ouch. And then eats him. I also think that's a very appropriate theme. I think it's no coincidence that we have the Ents and we have Tom Bombadil in this episode together.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I think a lot of their themes are kind of similar.
I get that.
And so yeah, that the hobbits are eaten by a tree, and then Tom Bombadil comes busting in, singing a song like, "Hey Dole, Merry Dole, it's Tom Bombadillo. He wears a bright blue coat and his boots are made of yellow." And I think people were like, what is this cartoon character doing in my very serious high fantasy book? And it's just a little bit of whimsy. And I find that very fun on a long, arduous journey. And a lot of people don't. And so that's why I'm pretty sure that's why Peter Jackson was like, no, we're not doing Tom Bombadil. He's it would add another 20 minutes to an already long movie. And then you got to address it in the Council of Elrond, which, by the way, the explanation that Elrond gives in the book, because they like, can't we just give it to Tom? He says, yeah, but Tom wouldn't want to. Like, Tom just doesn't want to be involved with this, and he just won't. And they're like, okay.
He just won't.
They're like, okay. He just won't care, is the thing.
He won't care. Interesting. Okay. Because
and I think that's the other confusing thing about Tom Bombadil is because Frodo gives him the ring and he's unaffected by it. He puts it on and you know how they all turn invisible when they put the one ring on? Tom Bombadil doesn't. He's just like, what a curious object. But also I think you should probably take it back and destroy it. And so I think there's a lot of people, like creatively directors, writers, who wouldn't know what to do with Tom Bombadil because he is such a powerful person who also kind of chooses to do nothing with that power, where he's very happy on his own quiet existence, gardening. He has some goats and a little lamb. He has a wife that we don't see in this episode. I think that's very fun. The stranger is washing him. That's another thing from the book, by the way. There's a scene where the hobbits all take baths and they all sing a song while they bathe. And so I like that the stranger, there's a lot of, I can't emphasize enough, there's a lot of singing in in the books. There's so much singing. I saw someone post somewhere, since when did Rings of Power become a musical? And I'm like,
wow,
you have to look at the books. You simply have to. There are so many songs.
Dang.
And I love that as the stranger's taking a bath, you can hear Tom, and it's captioned as Goldberry, some womanly voice, which is his wife. And then he kind of comes in, and I just love the kind of like confusion that he does with the stranger, where he's like, the stranger's like, isn't anyone else here? And he goes, nope, just you. Are you here? And the stranger's like, I think I'm here. What?
Who would you cast as Goldberry?
I don't know, but she's got to be like beautiful and bodacious.
Bodacious?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. She's got to be a hottie. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, what
have you seen what were the cards, the not Wizards of Warcraft, the
Magic the
Gathering card? Look up Goldberry
Magic.
The artwork they did for her was beautiful, and I think spot on.
Oh, okay. This feels like this is Patreon content or not, or OnlyFans content,
right?
Very. Okay.
And it's because she is also this mythical being. She is it's called the River Daughter. She is like a river nymph that technically Tom kind of like kidnapped from her homeland, but that's a different story.
Shame on him, but
it's okay. They worked it out.
Okay. I guess so. If she exists. Anyway. I do have a question about the wizards of it all, right? Because going into this, I'm like, he's gotta be Gandalf, right? He has to be Gandalf. Like, he talks like Gandalf. That's
definitely what they're leading to.
But there's another wizard who's definitely not Saruman. The Dark Wizard, I don't think that's
what I'm so confused. I'm also confused about that. Are you going to ask who is the Dark Wizard?
No, I mean, my guess is, don't tell me if you don't tell me, because what I know is that Saruman was a good guy up until like the last minute right before Gandalf came to see him, right? It's for what I know. And that's probably not accurate, right? He was the White Wizard for a reason, right? So, and he was also the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the stranger is Gandalf, there is another good guy wizard out there running around.
Potentially.
But this wizard is clearly evil. Outright says, I want to work with Sauron. I want to be evil, yada, yada, yada. He has evil minions and everything. That's not Sauron. Or not Saruman. That's not Saruman. So he's not Radagast. So he must be one of the blue wizards?
Maybe.
Are these two the blue wizards?
I have no clue.
So I'm like, okay.
Tolkien didn't write much or tell us much about the blue wizards. So I think that's good territory for the show to play with. Right. But I think a lot of people are asking similar questions as you, that we're not sure where they're going with this, and what where this story is leading, and whether or not they're going to break with lore.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, it's pretty obvious that this is Gandalf. And
is it?
My concern is that they are being so heavy-handed with it that they were going for, I think you were saying earlier at the start of the episode, it feels like this show is trying to hinge on big reveals. And one of them that they're trying to lean on is, who is the stranger? And I worry that they are adding so many clues that this is Gandalf that they are actually going to pull the rug out from under us and be like, no, just kidding. This is Saruman. And I think that's just bad writing to lead your viewers in one way so heavily and then be like, actually, just kidding. It's this other person. And then be like, are you not entertained? Did we deceive you? And it's like, no, it's like those riddles where they kind of don't give you all the information in it. And then they're like, oh, well, the reason Tommy was late to work is because he was dead. And it's like, that's not a riddle. You just told us two lies back to back.
You're exactly right. I know it wants me to believe that this is Gandalf. He's acting like Gandalf. He wears Gandalf's clothes. He's looking for a wooden stick to hold around.
Which the Harfoots keep calling a Gand. As in Gandalf. And then the leading store lady that the Harfoots talk to, they're like, oh yeah, he's a tall, he's a giant. And they say like an elf, and they say, no, bigger than an elf. And she says, oh, well, I don't care if your friend is a grand elf. And I'm like, Gandalf?
Grand elf.
Grand elf Gandalf.
Okay. All right.
So
I see where they go.
They're being kind of heavy-handed that yes, this is Gandalf.
So where is Saruman?
I don't know. And I think that could be interesting territory that Saruman's kind of always kept his hands clean of things, which is why Gandalf is such a crazy wizard to him that Gandalf always gets involved with shit.
Okay. So it's not normal for wizards to be involved in things.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
They're only supposed to get involved when it's really bad. But Gandalf going on adventures with the Hobbit and dwarves to save the dwarven homeland is kind of, it's like, hey, this is well below your pay grade. You don't need to be doing this. But Gandalf is like, nah, it's fun. I like it.
Like he is in this show.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
well, we'll see. I do have a theory because the Dark Wizard did have a metal staff, and I know Saruman also has a metal staff. So I'm wondering if the stranger's gonna. Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna share my theory about the Dark Wizard,
Ooh,
and I think there's a very small. I don't think this is going to play out, or that this is what will happen. But my theory is that this is Saruman, but he is actually. Whatever it is that he is doing, this involvement that he has with the Galdrem is actually some bigger ploy, that there is something larger going on here that only he is aware of that we're not seeing. Maybe he is trying to be the middleman here with these people so that he can intercept their involvement with the Istar, with the stranger. Maybe he's like, hey, I know these people are out looking for the stranger. Let me act like I'm on their side so that I can keep them away from him. And then, because in this episode, he does say, okay, you guys go after the Harfoots. I'll go find the wizard, the Istar, myself. So that's my theory. But because like you said, he has a metal staff. I think he looks like a younger Saruman. He sounds like Christopher Lee. I think that he is Saruman acting on some grander plan, and he's actually in control of a lot more of the situation than we're aware of at this time.
But his minions punch hobbits.
I know. But the
what the fuck?
But the fact that everyone calls him the Dark Wizard, even Tom, is kind of derailing that. More and more this theory of mine is derailed, where it's okay, we're having a lot of outside interference of he has this reputation as being a bad guy, so that's most likely not how it's going to play out.
Interesting.
But yeah, this is the territory that we're in when we're with different or new characters and we're in different parts of the lore that we don't know about. So not sure where they're headed with that. Yeah. So Poppy and Nori, like I said, they kind of stumble upon this community, this other community of halflings called the Stores. Side note, this is a community of halflings of color, basically. And I think that's really great that we get to see a lot more diversity added to this world and a lot more, just like it's a whole different group of characters and people that I didn't realize, that I had no idea that we were going to go into this territory. I don't know if the stores were like advertised as being a part of this season, but it was a very fun surprise for me that like they walk into this community and it's thriving, and they're all, Nori says, halflings living in holes. Who would have thought? Because they're a nomadic halfling group. And I love how Nori and Poppy are contrasted because they're wearing blue and everyone else is wearing like oranges and yellows. I love the little community that the stores have going on. And I think it's very fun that we're getting to explore like more halfling groups in this world. And but again, we're just like adding more into the pot that I don't know we needed. It's like we need to take ingredients out, not add more in.
Interesting. So you would just cut all the people of color out of this episode? Interesting, Mary Clay.
Justin, you got me. Oh, man.
Well,
dang it, you got me there.
Canceled. You're canceled. But actually, I have no. Remember what I said earlier in this episode? Like, yeah, let's have more creative things with people of color's hair. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The main halfling lady has a very creative haircut. No complaints. Yeah. I was like, wow, this seems in line with the Hobbit culture. You know what I mean? And I like to see it, as far as like I don't know what this area is supposed to be representing, It's just like,
what do you mean? Like in like geographically in Middle Earth, or?
I know Tolkien hated allegories. I know he hated all those metaphors, but come on. You know what I mean? Like, come on. So I'm wondering if these are supposed to be representative of a real place in the world,
Oh, I don't know about the story. I just know that the hobbits and the Shire were representative of like England and the English people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because they, I don't know, live quiet, idyllic lives, supposedly, and are comfortable drinking tea and reading books or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, this is great. I like it. I'm watching it, but
I wouldn't worry past that.
Yeah. It's like, what's the end goal here? So that's all.
Yeah. I am concerned about the end goal here. So actually, I think it's mostly just kind of like fleshing out the world a little bit more and adding a little more backstory to like who the Harfoots are and who the Hobbits are. Because Poppy, or one of them, whatever, is like, wow, yeah, well, Sadek also would have thrown us out too, so we get it. And they're like, who? Sadek Burrows. So she takes Nori over to this mural that tells of this story long ago of someone named, I don't know, like Maramus Burrows, who was a store who dreamed of this, Rorimus.
The Great Hobbit Migration.
Rorimus. Probably, yeah. Who basically was like, there's this, dreamed of this land by fresh waters and lush hills where stores could make permanent homes for themselves. And it's called the Sharked, or what, I forget what they call it, but the Shire translates to the Shire. And this person, Rorimus Burrows, left, and they're wondering if they found that community, and Nori says no, but I guess they never found that place and just kept walking, and then that's how the Harfoots came to be. So that's at least like a little for people who are like, I love the hobbits, I am a hobbit, I identify with them, I love the cozy cottagecore lifestyle. This part of the story, I think, is for them,
Yeah, I see it. I'm wondering if there's just going to be a moment at the last episode of the series where they finally get where they're going. Poppy, can you walk anymore? No, I think we'll settle right here. And then
zoom out and
zoom out. It's the Shire.
That's actually most likely what will happen.
And I'm okay with that because I like Nori and Poppy. I do. I'm just wondering if they're the first hobbits Or, oh my gosh, they're gonna bring Poppy and what's his name? Static Kling, uh,
Merrimack.
Merrimack. They're
Yeah,
gonna start a
that's some
family.
heavy-handed romance right there. Like just staring at each other. And I'm like, okay, we get
Yeah.
it. They're gonna fall in love.
Yeah, and then they'll start the shot. See, it all circles back. I can
Hmm.
see what you're doing. But I liked it, except the part where the lady got slapped. I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
what
So
is
the
happening?
Galdrim guys who come in doing a insane Bane impression. Why do you think we wear these masks? And I'm like, cause you're ugly. uh
Dang, okay, all
he says,
right.
why do you think we wear these masks? We'll come back and you don't want to find out. And I'm like, what?
What?
What is that? I'm like, what is that? Like, does that mean that they're like disfigured? They're like super disfigured. And that's why I'm like, is it that they're so ugly that like the sight of them instills horror and terror in everyone? Is it like a Medusa kind of a thing? A King
Okay.
Midas situation?
Were there elves? Elves wouldn't
Oh
be
no,
this
Midas
far
is
out.
touching, not looking.
Yes, a
But
Medusa.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
is this a
question for you.
reveal? Okay, go ahead.
I think this side of the story feels very Star Wars Sand People Tatooine-y.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
I was
Like with these
I,
people.
I was getting very much Return of the Jedi
Mm.
in that, like, okay, so we're coming to this new land. These feel like this feels Ewok to me, right? You have like the very bad stormtroopers or bad guys treating these Ewoks they're not supposed to, but this small group of people are gonna fight back and take back like their land and things like that. That feels very Star Wars to me. As far as sand goes, I'm not getting any. It's not Tatooine. It's definitely not. But I also, it's weird because I know the stranger is having like a Yoda scene right now. Like,
Yeah, really.
so I'm wondering if like the Star Wars parallels will continue in that the legally distinct dark wizard, is he going to be like, is he going to have like I'm your father moment, or
That would be
he
wild.
is Saruman and he's like, wait, you're my sister, Leia. No, we're wizards, stranger. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like they're
No.
related.
Okay, sure.
As in they're both wizards, or as in we're both Skywalkers. That's where I think it's gonna go. That's my
Okay.
guess. Don't hold me to it. It's just a guess.
Yeah.
You
You
know?
you are right that the stranger's having a Yoda moment because and that's where I want to wrap up like this side of the conversation, just going back to Tom, that I think they did a good job because like I said, there was a lot of hesitancy from the fandom surrounding Tom Bombadil. When they said we're doing that this season, I was on board, no questions asked, like gung ho, let's do this. A lot of people were worried that he was going to be silly and crazy and wackadoodle and that they wouldn't be able to take the show seriously anymore. I think they did a great job of balancing his eccentricities and his kind of I don't like he has such a otherworldly sense of knowledge. So much of the lines that he says are again straight from the book. When he says Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless.
Mm.
So I think they did a great job of establishing that this is like an old ancient character, the eldest, who has such a grand knowledge of everything going on and understanding. But he's a little unorthodox, a little crazy, a little scary. And that felt very Yoda to me. And I think maybe like they were inspired by Yoda potentially, because I think that's a good way of like, hey, you can have this eccentric teacher figure living in the woods by himself and you can still pull it off. And you can still have him be like a very revered figure that our characters trust and listen to.
I guess is the stranger gonna have the moment of where he has to choose between saving Nori and Poppy from something or continue his training, and he goes anyway, and then he like messes up. I'm wondering if that's gonna happen too.
Maybe I don't. Yeah, because they are leading to we want to get the Harfoots so that we have some leverage against the stranger. So it is possible that he is going to have to choose. You never know. But also going back to our, I guess, like our trifecta of like fantasy genres, it's also a little Harry Potter here, because Bombadil goes talking about like his staff, and he's like, oh, well, the staff, much like a name, chooses you. It's just who you are. Very like the wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter.
Ah. I'm always a fan. I'm always team wand when it comes to magical deployment devices. It's just like it fits in your pocket. How am I supposed to like?
It's a lot easier.
Carry around the staff, you know?
Yeah.
But anyways.
And then also finally the outro music over the credits was like a very like wonderful folksy song, Tom Bombadil song. And Justin's shaking his head. Uh-oh.
That means nothing to me.
But you didn't at least find it soothing?
I click out very quickly.
Damn. Yeah, I did kind of like the first couple lines and notes started playing, and then I'm like, all right, gotta get on with my life.
Exactly.
All right, let's finish this out. While the villagers of Pelargir plan to find the wild men, Arondir reveals that Estrid is one of them, having burned her mark of Adar. Isildur and Arondir make Estrid lead them to her people in hopes of finding Theo. After Estrid saves them, Isildur attempts to trust her, but she fears that she'll never be accepted by their people after her past. Suddenly, they are attacked by two Ents who lament the destruction of the forest. Arondir begs for their forgiveness and promises to seek out those who are hurting the land. The Ents let Theo and other prisoners go, and Estrid finds her betrothed, who she had assumed to be dead. Theo is reunited with Arondir, who plans to set out on this new mission of his to protect the land. So, talking about like what Arondir's motivations are now that Bronwyn Rip is dead, I think that's kind of what this storyline is doing, is like, okay, what are his motivations? And I think it's very elf of him to be like, I'm going to go on a mad hunt against the people who were cutting down trees.
Yes,
Leader of the Green Party. Forget Jill Stein.
So stop me if you heard this before. Stop me if, a group of 3 people go out into an unfamiliar territory, and they have to deal with monsters and things attacking them.
I hate to tell you, this is like almost every single story ever.
Hear me out, but 2 of them may be falling in love. The third doesn't truly trust the third party of the group. Does that sound familiar to anywhere?
If you're saying Star Wars, I don't know what specifically.
The classic not threesome, oh my gosh, trio. Wow, sorry, words of this group reminds me a lot of Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan. And a lot of
That's so funny because I've never
Leia.
Once considered those 3 a trio.
They were definitely a trio.
I think there were 3 characters who existed together.
Well, if this here's the thing, I don't know where this is gonna go, except I know that Isildur fails at throwing the ring in the mountain.
Okay, gonna pause you right there, because normies like you have this perception that, Isildur's just this dumb evil man who wanted power.
No, I don't think he's evil. I think he failed. Those are 2 different things. Failed.
Yeah, and like that's what the show is setting up to explore. Of like, actually, he was a really great guy, and then the ring was so powerful that it corrupted people like him.
Yeah. So I don't. That's at least as far as this plot line is going. That's all I know. So it's like, all right.
Same, and I think that's kind of all that the rest of us know, that it's leading to this moment where Isildur is corrupted and fails to destroy the ring.
Will he? I know. And I sent you a tweet earlier about why does everyone care about shipping Isildur? This makes no sense. I was like, I feel like if you're going to care about anyone shipping anyone, it's Isildur. It's
the line of
bloodline's really important.
Yeah, of Aragorn. Yeah. If you want Gondor to come back, then you kind of got to pay attention here. And what's super interesting is that we don't know Isildur's wife's name in the lore. So it could be Estrid.
This could be The Bachelor. Ooh.
It could, except for, dang, they get interrupted so many times. They're like about to kiss so many times, and they're interrupted. So first it's by Arondir, who's like, I see that scar on your neck. I appreciate that they didn't draw this out to be some big reveal some big like betrayal of Isildur's trust of like, oh, you're actually one of them. I'm glad that like we got it out of the way. We learned in the previous episode that she had burned this mark off, and then we brought it up right away.
Especially another question. I know that like it seems as though a lot of people got this mark not willingly.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of by force, but I also know that these people are cursed. Like there is no like there's not a lot of gray area. Like the orcs are not good. You know, you're never gonna sway an orc to like do the right thing or anything. That's not a thing. But these people, these Southlands people, from what I understand, they are cursed, or I guess they're like an ancestor made a wrong decision thousands of years ago, and forever these people will be cursed to be evil. Or
I wouldn't say cursed. I think they had this view and reputation of that, of like, yeah, they will always be evil because their people long ago fought on the side of Morgoth.
So my question is it a legally binding evil? Like they will always somehow like go back to being on the dark side, whether intentionally or not? Or is it a, like, you know, when you're playing D&D and it's like, is this like the DM saying this, or is this like a lore fact? You know what I'm saying? Like when a character says this armor is impenetrable, doesn't mean like you can't do anything against it. It's just like this character saying this is really tough to do. Is it the same way? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's like a chicken and the egg situation where these group of people they started off on the wrong foot. Okay, we get it. Yeah, that's not that great. They started off fighting on the side of Morgoth. That's not that great. But also, we don't know how willing participants they were in that first battle. They were probably, you know, lorded over and forced to do so. And then for years and years, centuries afterwards, they were always viewed as, oh, well, you're just the people who fought with the evil guy. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to have that reputation, then we might as well. Why are we working so hard to gain the trust of these people who are never going to give it to us? Let's go to Adar, who is promising us XYZ and actually seemingly wants to help this land and this area and us and believes in us. And so I think it's kind of that of like, they feel like they're not going to get anywhere if they're trying to work with the good guys or the good side. So maybe they feel like the only place they can go is this bad side. I don't know. And I am kind of confused about the Adar mark thing, because we did see in the first episode people being forced to pledge their loyalty to Adar or else they got killed. And then when they did that, they got this brand. So I'm confused about like, well, wouldn't you like, how do we not know that that was Estrid? Like she was forced into that. And so I'm confused about her motivations, because there's multiple points in the episode where she could have said, I promise I just am looking for a fresh start. My family and I were separated and I got captured, but I escaped and I'm just trying to start over. I'm just trying to find my family and my loved ones. I just want to help you guys. But she doesn't do that at any point. And when given the opportunity, but then when she has the chance to run away, when Isildur and Arondir get sucked into the never-ending story bog.
Oh, too soon.
Except for instead of the horse, it's Arondir, because Isildur looks like the kid in that movie. Anyway.
True. He does. He really does. Good for him.
You know, she has that chance to run away, but she chooses to come back and save them. And then that's what makes that's what makes Arondir leave that key. And she's like, it's up to you if you want to let me go or not. And so he undoes the shackles and you're like, okay, great. And then she pulls the sword on him and says, my people are not one to forgive. And she says, like, they will never accept me or believe me. And I'm confused about who she means. Does she mean like Isildur's people and the people at Pelargir? Or does she mean the wild men? And which, so I'm confused about this. I'm confused about like what her motivations are. Does she genuinely want to? I think ultimately she is trying to protect herself and probably find her loved ones again. And will do that by any means necessary, maybe. But yeah, I'm confused about like what her backstory is. Does she want to work with Isildur and these people, or was she looking for her first way out, you know? And I don't know the answers to those questions.
She finds her fiance. I feel like she was just trying to find her fiance. And these woods are dangerous. I don't think she thought that she could survive by themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just her out in these woods. So she needed backup, you know? It's just I do like I want to care, but then there's Theo's haircut. It's like, oh, all right.
It's a bowl cut.
Come on. The Theo's haircut. It's rough, man. It's really bad.
Maybe he'll get a better one. It'll be fine.
Either grow it out or cut it off.
It's okay. He's a teenager. Didn't you have an awkward hair phase when you were a teenager?
Come on. It's giving Lord Farquaad, man. Help a guy out. Come on.
Yo, Arondir, like at the start of this plot line, says Theo has survived far worse. He'll be okay. And I'm like, he's like 14 years old. Like, let's give him a break. Let's not, like, just because he has survived far worse, maybe let's not count on that, you know?
He needs to go to school. He needs to brush his teeth. Come on, man.
It doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
Dang. All right. Best of luck.
The Ints coming in, especially that one of them is an Int wife. When I read the books, every time I did a little Q&A episode, people would ask me, what are your favorite parts? Or what would you like to learn more about? What, if you could sit with Tolkien, what would you ask him about? And I almost always, it came down to one of two things. Like, tell me, like, Tom Bombadil or the Ent wives. Because the Ent wives just, like, disappeared. And the Ints, when Merry and Pippin are talking with Treebeard, they're like, don't you have any children, any younglings? And he's like, oh, well, the Ent wives, they left a long time ago and we lost them. And they're like, what? What do you mean you lost them?
You lost your wives.
And I've always been like, what were the events that led to the Ent wives just being like, we're done.
You forget to cherish them.
And I think I've heard that there is some lore answer that Tolkien gave in some letter or some footnote somewhere, whatever, that the Ent wives were destroyed in some other forest. But anyway, the fact that we get to see an Ent wife is so exciting to me. I really love the Ents from the movies. I think the design of these Ents was really great. And I loved, like, I feel like this is such a one piece of this story is such a heart of Tolkien about how war ravages the land. Mm-hmm. And you really feel that pain of the Ents. And we see that they have imprisoned all of these people who were, the wild men were like cutting down the trees. And we see that, and that's where Theo is. They're in these like tree prisons. And it's very, Te Ka and Te Fiti from Moana of like these environmental, spiritual beings who are so connected to the land, lashing out in anger that it's being destroyed. Mm-hmm. And when Arondir confronts them and it's like, I understand that you're angry. Oh my God, it's so funny when they're like, have you ever laid harm on a tree? And he's like, I mean, it was one time. And it's like, Arondir, you can lie. You can lie and say no. But here's the thing.
Abraham Lincoln.
He's an elf. And if a tree is asking him, have you ever cut down a tree? He's not going to lie because he's an elf. He's not going to lie about trees.
Does he have a wooden breastplate? You know,
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
but he's referring to in episode I think it's 3 when he's imprisoned in that orc camp and they force him. They have like a whole battle and like 2 elves die because they are asked to cut down this lone standing tree in the landscape. And the elves are like, we're not going to do it. And then like 2 of them are killed over this. And Arondir is like, I will cut it down. And then he like goes and apologizes to the tree before he starts cutting it down. Anyway, Arondir pleads with the Ents and is like, I understand your anger and we beg your forgiveness. And I promise that I will seek out those who are harming your land. And the Ents are like, they say like, forgiveness takes an age, but basically like, so forgiveness is like growing a tree, you know? It takes a while, but if you invest that time into it, it can bloom into something really beautiful and nice.
Oh.
And they release all these prisoners. That's when Estrid's boyfriend's name is Hagen, which I just think is funny. That just seems like a very, I don't know, modern, normal name to me.
Pagan. Like pagan.
Anyway, that just took me out. And again, Estrid and Isildur going in for that kiss. And then, oh no, there's Hagen. So he comes out.
Do you think Isildur is going to become a homewrecker?
Probably. I feel like Hagen's probably going to get killed at some point, and then, you know.
Conveniently killed.
Yeah.
Oh, darn. Whoops. I guess you're single now. Which is fine.
Or she might, or she might not even be becoming a love interest for him. Who knows?
Oh, okay. Who could it be?
You can go anywhere.
He's single now.
He's single. Where is Beric? I feel like we didn't see Beric we saw the whole point of the previous episode was saving Beric, and then we didn't really see him in this episode. Did he make it out safely? I hope so.
If any horse can hold its own, it's Beric. He killed more orcs than Isildur ever did. Literally. I don't know what the death count of Isildur is, but he was pretty good.
So Theo and Arondir reunite, and Arondir's like, I'm glad I saved you, but I have a larger mission now. I'm going to go after these orcs because he's an elf. And when an elf makes a promise to a tree, he keeps that promise. So this is now his story, his motivation. He's going to follow this band of orcs and potentially have another confrontation with Adar. And hey, and you know who just got kidnapped by them? Galadriel.
Conveniently.
So maybe those plot lines will converge. That would be nice.
Yeah.
And then Theo said, Arondir's like, do you want to come with me? And Theo says, no, I'm needed elsewhere. So I think he's going to go back to the village and be a healer, because Arondir says something to him like that in the previous episode. And then Theo's like, well, this village's healer just burned on a pyre. And then he's an angsty teenager because his mom died.
Don't worry. He's now the Lord of Pelagir.
Yeah, I was confused about
that. I have a theory. I think that marked him for death. Because I know that one of the things I'm supposed to be looking for, according to the fandom, is a couple of mortal men who like some jewelry and like black clothing.
Yeah, a lot of people have theories about Theo being one of the Nazgul, or even potentially the Witch King, or him becoming the king of the dead army. Remember in Return of the King when they go to get the dead army?
He broke his promise, you know?
But I feel like we would really need to do a big time jump, because I think Theo's still a kid and a teenager.
Yeah, it's going to be real sad.
So I'm confused. I don't think Sauron would give him one of the 9 rings, you know?
Okay, so I have a couple of candidates who I think are going to get. I think Pharazôn. Ooh, I think he's going to get one of those rings. Pharazôn, his son, the guy who chanted Pharazôn, Pharazôn. Nah, I think they're gonna I think they maybe escape Numenor. I don't know. Are they gonna kill that entire cast when it goes under? I don't know. Would they? I know it's still his friends.
I'll tell you that Elendil takes his family and some of the faithful, the people who, you know, believe and trust in the elves from Numenor. They all escape on a ship.
Okay.
And so that's how like Elendil and Isildur, you know, survive to. Actually, do you know that Elendil's involved in that fight where Isildur takes the ring?
I do not know that.
Okay, cool. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, whoever else is gonna be a part of that group that makes it from Numenor to Middle Earth, I guess you'll have to find out.
Do you think the chances of Pharazôn getting a 9 mortal men ring?
I don't want to say anything because
Are they named the people who get the ring?
No, it's just like 9 mortal men.
Okay.
But
all right.
We know a lot more about Pharazôn's story and what happens with him. And I don't think he's going to cross paths with Sauron in that way.
Interesting. Okay, we'll see then.
It's another way. But maybe with this show and how, like we've talked about, we're trying to get him to push together plot lines. Maybe he will get a ring.
It's just hard because there's literally not there's not even 9 human main characters.
Yeah, that do be true.
So like either some of them are going to be like randos and nobodies, or we could use some of this season to build out some of the human population of just getting to know.
I know.
I have a hard time believing Hagen is going to get a ring. Yeah.
Like, just give them to these random villagers who have like a one-off line.
Yeah, that's not satisfying. I think probably his friend.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see more of, and maybe we will in future seasons, of Sauron building up his own group of like trusted people, and eventually they get their rings.
We need more human perspective. That's my beef.
Where's the human representation?
That's what I'm talking about.
Where is it?
It's sorely lacking, especially in the show.
I know, it's very, especially because they killed off one of them off screen. So
yeah, I would have loved to see Braun with the ring.
She's the Witch King. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Witch Queen.
Will the fandom throw a fit if a woman gets one of the 9 mortal rings? Really?
Yeah.
You think she would throw, like, everyone would be like, a woman? They clearly said 9 mortal men.
Yes. I know you think you were being like funny and satirical with what you just said, but that's precisely what will happen.
They will burn it down.
And like the real answer is that like, well, it just says mortal men. It means like the race of
men,
human.
Yeah.
Which plays into that I am no man when Eowyn kills the Witch King of like, oh well, it could have been a regular man because blood, or it just meant that it couldn't been someone from the human race, and whatever.
I like that moment too in the movies, but that's a whole nother podcast. Anyway, continue.
I don't know if there is anything else for us to continue on. I'm scrolling back through my notes to make sure. We desperately need more humor in the show because there's this one moment. It's right after Isildur and Arondir get like pulled from that bog, and the worm monster is killed, and Isildur has this look on his face. He sits back and goes, "What was that?" And I laughed a lot, and I wish they would give us some more comedic moments. But I guess it's not that kind of a show.
It is, but the comedic engine of the show is the dwarven plot line, which is not really like
I wouldn't say they're comedic anymore.
Really? I mean, they have the most joke. I would say
I think that's because that comes from a place of like they have so much joy in their life. But like, I don't know if you know this, but it's not a very joyful time. It's not a very joyful time for the dwarves right now.
Balrog's coming. I know that one. There was a moment where I think it was like 2 episodes ago where a rock crashes onto a bridge. And I was like, is that the bridge? Is that the bridge that Gandalf dies on?
Could be. We don't know. I know. It's going to be real sad.
I know. This is Khazad-dûm. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's very lovely how we get to see a dwarven city in its prime. Yeah. We never get to see that ever. And I really appreciate that because, like I said before in another podcast, dwarves are my favorite in Lord of the Rings. They're so colorful, sorely lacking.
And that's I think they've done such I think the dwarves are the strongest written part of this show. Like they're not, I agree. They don't have a lot to do. Like if we did like a pie chart of like how much time the dwarves take up, it's not as much, but like it's very quality.
I think because it comes from a real place. You know what I mean? Like in other plot lines of the show, it relies on your knowledge of the source material or like, what's coming, but with the dwarves especially, it relies on real relationships that we all know and love, right? You know what I mean? You don't want to talk to your in-laws. You're having a fight with your parents about what to do with the family estate. You know what I mean? Like prices are going up. Grocery shopping is getting harder. It's those like, around the table issues.
And, I think in some cases it is kind of like, oh, we know where this is coming. And it leans too much on that. But I think it almost works in the dwarves' favor for this show
Right.
because we know what's coming with the Balrog. And so I think the writers were like, so then let's make this time with the dwarves worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's really set up and show what they lost.
Dang.
Yeah.
So do you think Deese is going to make it? Do you think Durin's going to make it? Durin Jr.?
Mm-hmm.
You think they're all going to die? Dang. You're not going to see like one dwarf live?
I don't know. So I would, if I were you and you want this to remain a surprise for the show, don't look it up. But we do have it in the timeline, like which King Durin was in power when the Balrog attacked. And you can then make that decision to learn whether or not our current Prince Durin Jr. will survive or not. I have no clue. I don't, because it's a little complicated because they've compressed some of the timeline
Right.
in this show. So I don't know. Well, definitely King Durin. He's out.
Durin Sr. Dang. Sorry, Grandpa Durin.
Killing him off.
Even what about the door maker guy who made the speak friend and enter? Is he gonna survive? No!
I don't know, Justin. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Listener, you should have seen Mary Clay's face. It's almost as if she looked over at like a sniper. There was like a red dot coming on her head. She's like, I don't know. Dang, rest in peace, door guy. Hardly knew thee.
Yep. Let me see. Oh, I forgot to say at the beginning. Right now, this episode has just kidding. That's season 1. On IMDb, this episode has a 6.9. Nice.
Whoa.
With like 5,000 reviews. So I feel like that's pretty fair. Rather than like being maliciously, there's definitely a huge number of like 1-star reviews. This is definitely not a 1-star show.
Oh, for sure.
It's not a 10-star show. It's not really I would say it's solidly a 6 to 7-star show.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What would it take for it to get to a 10 then?
A lot of things that like I don't have the knowledge to do. Like I'm not a screenwriter, I'm not a director, so I wouldn't know what it takes. But I think, again, I just think they've bitten off more than they can chew. I think it could be a 10 if they had picked like if they had just been like, let's do the Rings of Power show. We're not going to do the Wizard show. We're not going to do the Numenor show. We're not going to do the Orc and Adar show. We're going to do the Rings of Power show. And that still gives us a lot of content to work with. That's the elves. That's the dwarves. That's Sauron. Even like within the elves, there's so much conflict going on. So like interpersonal conflict. So that's what I think. They could have had a 10-star show if they had just like focused on one thing and done it really well.
Fair enough.
So Justin, we're almost 2 hours in. So let's close this out. Any final thoughts about this episode?
I hope that everything works out, and I hope all the dwarves live. I hope everyone gets some nice jewelry, and you know what? No one goes to war. That's what I hope. But I know that's not the case. And hashtag Rings of Powers is inspired by Star Wars. That's it. Bye.
Where can people follow you and find you on the internet?
You can find me wherever toys are sold on the internet. That is TikTok, Twitter, and on Instagram at FreddiesRoommate.
And, well, I guess you already gave some final words, which is hashtag Rings of Power is inspired by Star Wars. Is that what it was?
The Force of Power? Power of the Force? Ooh, I like it.
Actually, oh man, okay. I know I said let's close this episode out, but like I did in the previous episodes, it felt like, oh, there's this overarching force that's like guiding people together. And I'm like, but that doesn't exist in this universe. So where did this come from? Why are we doing this? Why, what?
You know what that force is called?
The Force.
No, it's called Raylo. Thanks you so much, everyone. Good night.
See, this is where I'm supposed to say, and that's what I'm talking about. But I still disagree with that statement. And that's what I'm talking about.